I thought it was a real dud. Did you watch it? Did you make it through? State of the Union, or I guess it's technically an address to the joint session because he hasn't been president for all that long. Here he comes in. They were really conspicuous about that social distancing. What jumped out at me almost right away, what he did not talk about. We have no southern border, essentially. We have no idea how many people are in the country. He did not talk about the border crisis. Also, kids missing school. They're now entering their second year of this ludicrous situation, and no mention of that. He did talk a lot about handing out money, and my wife actually pointed out that it reminded her of something she heard in college. Let's put up the quote from the great economist Milton Friedman. When you start paying people to be poor, you wind up with an awful lot of poor people. Is that what could be happening here? Stay tuned. Also, this got me, and it really jumped out, how we so mischaracterized American history.
100 days since I took the oath of office and lifted my hand off our family Bible and inherited a nation, we all did, that was in crisis. The worst pandemic in a century, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
Right there. The worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. He's talking about January 6th. You know, as a New Yorker, as somebody who was here on 9/11, as somebody who was at ground zero on 9/11, I find that hugely offensive. And I think he's lying for political purposes. September 11th, 2001, just a couple of blocks from World Trade Center 7, just before it came down. Joe engaged in a great deal of his typical deception and non sequiturs. And listen to this.
12 years is no longer enough today to compete with the rest of the world in the 21st century. That's why my American Families Plan guarantees 4 additional years of public education for every person in America, starting as early as we can.
Am I nitpicking? But 12 years is not enough, but it is enough for one of those environmental jobs that he's bragging about. And then there was this. Joe thinks that those sitting in the room, senators, cabinet members, members of the House, that's the country?
Our Constitution opens with the words, as trite as it sounds, we the people. Well, it's time to remember that we the people are the government, you and I. Not some force in a distant capital, not some powerful force that we have no control over. It's us. It's we the people.
We the people are the government. I think that is kind of odd. That's not what most of us think of when we think we the people. It's us, Joe, not people in the government. So when he was making this speech, I thought back to the good old days when Joe was just an amiable guy from a nowhere state, sorry, Delaware, listening to the president give the big speech. You know, he's been in that room since the early 1970s, listening to presidents give the big speech. Richard Nixon, 1974. Somewhere in this room is a young Joe Biden, a senator, enjoying the perks of being a senator and fantasizing probably about one day being president. All senators do that, by the way. And I wondered what other lessons was he learning about politics back then. It was different when Joe first started. Politics, kind of hardball, even more so than today. People in power often use the instruments of government to get back at their political enemies. I love Richard Nixon, but he was kind of famous for that. And then I thought about Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani, who worked for Donald Trump, is now being persecuted by the federal government. His house was searched yesterday. His office was searched yesterday. Here's the press camped out in front of his apartment. I think they're trying to do to him what they have done to so many people who have associated with President Trump. Criminalize them. Joseph Stalin said, "Show me the man, I'll show you the crime." Take a look at this. The government, they've tried to smear anybody who's associated with Donald Trump. And they try to get him in trouble for all kinds of things that have nothing to do, often, with Donald Trump. And that brings me back to Rudy Giuliani. You think Joe Biden and the DOJ, which we know can be very, very political, might they be thinking about him, trying to get him after he said stuff like this?
Biden has changed his principles so often, he no longer has any principles. He's a Trojan horse with Bernie, AOC, Pelosi, Black Lives Matter, and his party's entire left wing, just waiting to execute their pro-criminal, anti-police, socialist policies.
Talk about foreseeing, foretelling the future, right? He nailed it. That's last August. And then closer to the election, Rudy Giuliani was brutal about Joe Biden.
Biden was using his son in a horrible way as a bag man. You would think he would get some kind of a political flunky to be his bag man, but instead, as his bag man, he used his son, who's afflicted with drug addiction. And over the period of years, he made the drug addiction much, much worse by having his son involved with some of the most crooked people in the world.
Now, do you think Donald Trump knew or cared who Joe Biden's lawyer was during the campaign? Probably not. But Joe Biden knew everything about Rudy Giuliani and what he was saying.
5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This is
told.
where he's going.
Rudy Giuliani, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President then. What did Rudy Giuliani do? You know, he was America's hero. He still is in my book. Time Magazine Man of the Year in the aftermath of September 11th, 2001. What did he do? Why did the media start picking on him? Well, a couple of things. He is a Republican after all. He ran for president once and an associate and friend of Donald Trump. And that's, you know what they try to do with associates and friends of Donald Trump. And I know that Joe Biden knows how to play this game. We all do. Media overlooks it sometimes or just kind of sweeps it away. Joe Biden was in the Oval Office in early January in 2017 with Comey and the president when they were kicking around ways of how to get Michael Flynn. Now, Joe Biden was the lame duck vice president at the time, and he was kicking around the ideas with the DOJ and the FBI. How do we get Mike Flynn? It's in Peter Strzok's notes. Take a look at this. Maybe we can get Flynn on the Logan Act, VP. Logan Act to prosecute Flynn. That's what they're talking about. Now, Joe Biden lied about this a lot.
What did you know about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn, and was there anything improper done?
I know nothing about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn, number one. Number two, this is all about diversion.
I do want to press that. You say you didn't know anything about it, but you were reported to be at a January 5th, 2017 meeting where you and the president were briefed on the FBI's plan to question Michael Flynn over those conversations he had with the Russian ambassador Kislyak.
Now, I thought you asked me whether or not I had anything to do with him being prosecuted.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was aware that they asked for an investigation, but that's all I know about it, and I don't think anything else.
Hey, George, I give him a hard time. He totally nailed Biden there. Yeah, he knew about it. He was suggesting ideas, according to the FBI's own notes. Now, why is this important to you and me? Well, listen to Andrew Giuliani, former Newsmax contributor, by the way, talk about what this means for you and me if they can go after the president's lawyer.
Anybody, any American, whether you're red or blue, should be extremely disturbed by what happened here today, by the continued politicization of the Justice Department. This is disgusting. This is absolutely absurd, and it's the continued politicization of the Justice Department that we have seen, and it has to stop. If this can happen to the former president's lawyer, this can happen to any American.
He's right. Andrew Giuliani, by the way, thinking about running for governor of New York State. Son of Rudy, I think that would be pretty cool.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.